Welcome back, episode 3 of Red Wine and CBD, the podcast. So I think it dawned on the Jeremys and myself that we're 3 episodes in and we've talked ad nauseum about CBD, but we have not talked about red wine yet, or just wine in general. And before we started recording here, Jeremy Lang already let it slip that his drink of choice this evening is a bottle of wine from Costco. So we realized we needed to bring in an expert. So we called upon Corinne Holman Martin is joining us. She's going through some wine education certifications right now. Corinne, I think you could do a lot better job of explaining the process of what you're going through right now than I would. So why don't you talk a little bit about your training and your passion for wine?
Thanks, Tom. First of all, I am not going to bash what Jeremy is drinking, also known as Lang. Whatever floats your boat, man, that's what you should drink. Whatever makes you happy.
Red and wet, Corinne, so we're good.
That's awesome. Yes. And that's how I feel about wine in general. But thank you, Tom. First of all, I would probably consider myself a wine enthusiast, not a wine expert. And the only reason why I say that is wine is ever changing and you're just constantly learning all the time. But to give you the boring background, currently I have certification in Wine Spirits Education Trust in level 1 and 2. Probably for most people, no one would know what the hell that is, but just know it's a lot of studying and some testing. I'm undergoing level 3, and I'm going to call myself out. I actually sat for the level 3 exam and I failed. I failed one of the 3 sections. Therefore, I had to take the whole damn thing over again. It was fucking hard. But you know what? I'm okay with that because I learned a lot from the experience. So going through level 3, and then I am going to go for my diploma in wine. So I'm really more on the education side. I also did my introduction to sommelier through the Court of Master Sommeliers, and I passed that motherfucker, and that was great. So that's where I'm at right now. So I would, again, just say I'm a wine enthusiast and really enjoy learning about wine and, of course, drinking wine.
So what's the end goal there, Corinne? And by the way, thank you for joining the podcast. It's great to see you. And, what's the, having known you for so long, I always known you for a wine enthusiast. But what's the end goal of this?
Well, I will tell you, it depends on who you talk to. I think if you talk to my husband, the end goal is to spend as much money as possible on wine. But I would say my end goal for sure is to, eventually look to the future of taking the work that I've done in experiential marketing and taking that to wine. I really enjoy doing customized, personalized wine tasting. I also love, taking people on, trips to really have them experience wine, but not in what would be considered a typical fashion. I want people to experience wine that they may have been a little bit leery to try or get out of their comfort zone, really expand their palate. And so that's kind of the end goal for me as I look towards becoming a little bit older and possibly shifting careers down the road. That's what I really want to do, is just continue to educate people with wine and also have a great time with it.
That's cool. It's able to compare 2 passions of yours, and because I know passion of yours is hosting clients, well-behaved clients, and there's we all know the ill-behaved clients and who they may be, but I think it's very rare in life that you get to kind of combine passions, and I think it's perfectly fitting for what Jeremy and I started and why we started Queen City Greens, because we have a passion for CBD and a passion for educating people, because it's very similar to yourself. I think we're enthusiasts for CBD. We're also educators, and we're trying to educate those, because we always, real estate, which is also a side hustle for JD, it's location, location, location. And we feel in CBD, it's about education, education, education. And it's, there's a lot of misconceptions we've talked on this podcast in the past. There's a lot of junk out there, like there is wine, right? So it's kind of like, the stuff you buy at Quick Trip, CBD or wine, is pretty much crap. And the stuff you buy you know, at wine stores or CBD stores is more authentic and real to its nature, right? So it's there's a lot of similarities, which is one of the reasons why we went down the path of red wine and CBD, is because, you know, there's a lot of education that goes in all of it, and it's great to hear what your passions are, because those are kind of like similar, like I said, to why we started Queen City Green.
That's great, Lang, because I think, you know, one of the things I've learned about wine education is I hear from people who will say, oh, I hate drinking Cabernet. And I'll ask them, why? Well, I had a really bad experience. It gave me a headache. I'll go deeper. I'll ask them, what were you eating at the time when you were drinking wine? You know, what were you doing and so forth? Because it plays into all of that. And I'll, you know, point blank ask them, where did you buy it? What were you drinking? Because when you look at a mass production wine, it's very different from maybe a boutique small lot wine that you're drinking. There is nothing wrong with mass production wine. There's a purpose to that, right? If you know, it's economically works for most consumers, and that's fine, but you need to know what you're going to get. But when you compare that to all wines, I'm going to call bullshit on that. I'm going to say, listen, more than likely I can find you a wine in the same price point that's going to be at a higher quality. And that's just educating people on what to look for, right? Because wine can be intimidating. I'm sure same with CBD. It's like, where do you begin? Because there's so much information out there. It's like, well, shit, I don't even know where to start. Right. Like, how do I know from quality stuff from bad stuff? And I think that gives, you know, this is a great platform to share that on some of the tips that we can offer to people to make them feel comfortable making those purchases with CBD and wine and so forth. And then even better, red wine infused with CBD. And, you know, are people going to be comfortable with that? And I probably jumped the gun, Lang, so sorry.
Use the word intimidated, and I would agree that when I'm usually at a restaurant and the wine menu comes around, I pass it to the person to my left or right, because I don't want to be the guy who picks the wrong bottle of wine. I look at price, and I don't, you know, it's the you know, it's the first thing you look at. Well, that's got to be good. It's 88 bucks a bottle, whereas, you know, I have no idea, right? So. Hence my Costco wine here with Snoop Dogg on it. So,
well, Snoop is the man, but I would say when you're going into a restaurant, know that that wine price is about 3 times higher than you would get in retail. You know, and that's how restaurants make their money. So, listen, I've gone into restaurants and I've seen some wines in there that are at a $80, $90 price point, and I'm going, shit, I could have gotten that for like 21 bucks. So, but a lot of people are not going to know that. And a lot of times that is a driver for them, thinking that if it's a high priced wine, that is a high quality wine. And that's not always the case.
Right.
Hey, Corinne, I've got a question for you. If someone is going to sitting down at a restaurant like we're talking about, do you have any tips for being able to select, you know, a good glass or bottle of wine, depending on the group size?
Well, the one thing I would recommend is asking if the restaurant has, you know, on the floor sommelier. And if they have a sommelier, they describe like, okay, this is what I'm looking at from a price point standpoint. And I would also say a sommelier might let you do a taste and see if you even like the wine, especially if it's a wine by the glass. And not to be afraid to ask the questions, right? Because there are people there to help you and they want to educate as well. I would also say, JD, you know, I can give you my phone number and people could text me and send me a snapshot of what the wine list is. Lang's done it. My husband's done it. Everyone's done it. So, you know, if you have a friend that loves wine, shit, send over the wine list to me and I'll help you pick it out. But I think more importantly, it's don't be afraid to ask questions about the wine and tell them, you know, what you like, what, you know, are you more on the white wine side? Are you more on the red side? Don't be intimidated, because that's what they're there for. They want to educate, but they also want to sell wine on the floor too. But if you give them a price point, they're going to work with you.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
when you're going to a wine store and they're trying to push wine, what are you thinking? What are you pushing? How do you deal with that question?
It's a great question. Because a lot of times when I do go in the store, I'm a little bit of a weirdo. I will go up and down the aisle of the wines. I will touch bottles. I just love that. And I think a lot of people that are working, the sales folks that are working in the store, look at that as someone who doesn't know what they're looking for. So it's a little bit of a game for me. I kind of play the game. I'll see what they're going to try to sell me. And a lot of times it becomes very personal. The salesperson's like, listen, I really like this wine. This is what I like about it. And I'll ask them, what do you like about it? What's so great about this wine? And I tend to be fairly open-minded, but I also know it depends on what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for a gift or if I'm looking at hosting people, it could be completely different on what I'm going to buy, right? And the one thing I would say is, for me personally, every bottle of wine is an experience, because I think about how the wine is made, what was the weather at the time when those grapes were harvested, the people that harvested the grapes, what was going through the mind of the winemaker when they were making that wine. I also, one of my things is like, it doesn't matter if it's a lower price wine or a high price wine. It should be treated with respect because of the work that went into making the wine. And so that's a lot of shit that I deal with when I go into a store, which is not the average consumer, Lang. Most consumers, they will drink the wine within 6 hours of purchasing the wine. More than likely, when I purchase the wine, I might be looking at, this is an investment. I'm going to lay this down for a few years and I'm not going to touch it. Or again, like I said, or I'm hosting an event or I'm hosting some friends and I want to expand their palates. It can go all over the place. And I think that's why it's really important to ask the questions of people of what they're looking for when they're buying a wine, and not hesitate to ask the questions and not be intimidated by that.
Hey, Tom, how do you buy wine?
It's one of my stories with wine is that for the longest time, and Jeremy was there in the Sonoma trip we did. I graduated school and I was interning with the race team, and then one of the first trips they sent me on was out to Sonoma, right? So I had gone from just literally slapping the bag at college parties to all of a sudden someone's handing me this very nice bottle of wine, and I was like, it hit me at that moment. I was like, oh, there is a difference between the Kmart and Costco wine, but we had and JD and Lang both got to meet these people when we were out in Sonoma, but they own their own vineyard, and it was something that had been in their family for generations, right? And it was really cool. I almost enjoyed hearing the story as much, if not more, than drinking the wine, because just like you were saying, Corinne, where it's, you hear the backstory and the thought process and the care and the hard work that goes into it, and it really lent to a really, really cool experience and kind of rounded out I keep saying experience, but of drinking their wine.
I think it is, though. I mean, that wasn't, I think Napa's, Corinne, you've done it, you've traveled and for wine and stuff, but going to a vineyard here in North Carolina is one thing, but going to Napa and seeing, in my opinion, call me a snob in that sense, but I think Napa and Sonoma is like the mecca of wine in this country. And I think it's, you go there, and Tom, you hit the nail on the head. It's an experience. And I think, my fond memories of going to Sonoma and is going to the vineyards and the wineries and seeing, Corinne, to your point, the work that goes into it. Right. And just the beauty of the process and the beauty of the vine itself in a row. It's just very meticulous and very methodical. And it's very, it's almost perfect. Right. And I think that's that's the part that I enjoy the most.
It struck me as art, right? It really is an art to the growing process and everything that goes into it.
It's like growing cannabis or hemp.
There you go.
I mean, as I'm growing it now, and I'm, it's definitely, it's a full-time job. So and I'll probably get arrested for saying this in the podcast. So it's, whatever. So.
Well, and I think too is that's why I what's great about wine is, I might drink a Pinot from Santa Barbara where the vintage was 2011. I have the same wine maker or label Santa Barbara, and I drink it, the vintage is 2018, and it tastes completely different from what I drank in 2012.
It tastes different to you.
And
to us, it tastes the same,
me.
probably.
No, believe it or not, Lang, I think that's another thing. I think people feel like there has to be a right answer on what they're drinking and what they're smelling in wine. And everybody's palate and everyone's sense of smell is different from one another. I think the reason why I got into wine was I have a palate that can just pick up so many flavors. I have a high sense of smell. And I think that's what kind of freaked me out when I started drinking wine, was like, whoa, I'm picking up all this shit. Whoa, what's going on here? But a lot of that too comes from practice. Like, I mean, how many people can say they can smell gooseberry in a wine? That's practice, right? Like it's not, it doesn't always come natural. And that's why I say there's not always a right answer, but if we can educate people around that and make them feel comfortable being wine, CBD, any of that, then they're going to purchase more, right? They're going to purchase more, and it's going to become part of their lifestyle. And I think that's what's really important, is that we got to stop intimidating people. Instead, educate them and make them feel good about what they're purchasing and what they're being a part of.
Right. We keep talking about Sonoma, and probably one of my favorite stories about wine is I was traveling to Watkins Glen one year by myself, and I kept driving, through the Finger Lakes area, and there's all these wineries on the side of the road, and I was like, I'm going to stop. And then finally, after the last race, everybody else had cleared out, and I'm heading back, and I didn't have a flight till the next day. I pulled in one. There's nobody in the parking lot, and I walked up, and I'm expecting the guy just to be closed, and he was closing, but he said, "Come on in, let me show you around," and he took me in. It was like 6, 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. I ended up staying there for a couple of hours. We sat on the back porch in rocking chairs and watched the sunset below the mountains.
Like Bartles and James.
Drinking wine. I mean, it was like this amazing experience that just happened because I took the time to stop in and see, this winery. It just took the chance. And this guy was so gracious and just kind of opened his doors and taught me a lot that I forgot. And but it was a lot of fun at the time. So
Finger Lakes has amazing Rieslings up in that area. Like that's on my next wine trip. I want to go up there and I just want to hit all of it. I mean, it's fantastic. They produce some fantastic wines in that area. I remember I was doing a work trip to Austria, and I decided that I was going to do some personal time and go in 2 days before my work meetings were going to happen. And my husband, David, also known as D Mart, was kind of like, seriously, really, why do we want to do this? And I said, when else am I going to have an opportunity to experience these wines, right? And I went in, it was off season. It was in November of 2019. I got myself a driver that was, recommended by a friend of mine. And I had the most amazing time. And in doing wine tasting in Europe is completely different than doing in US. In the US, usually you have to pay for your wine tastings, right? So the first winery I walk into, Leumer. It's very modern. It's kind of in the middle of this Austrian countryside. I walk in and they're pouring out bottle after bottle after bottle. Literally, there were 25 bottles in front of me.
Holy cow.
And immediately I'm like, shit, how much is this going to cost me? God damn, right? I'm like, oh my God. And finally I said to this wonderful wine manager, I said, listen, how much is it for this tasting? And she's like, we don't charge for tasting. And I went, well, then let's not stop at 25 bottles. Keep on coming.
Let's keep going, yeah.
but the point was, then the winemaker came out, and I had this one-on-one experience with the winemaker. And that was another thing. Like when I arrived, I expected a group of people to be there. No, it was just me, some crazy American, just randomly coming to, one of the best wineries in Austria. And the winemaker is literally holding my hand and taking me through their process. And I just, at that point, I'm like, I know I'm on the right path. This is what I'd love to do. This is my balance between work and personal life. I love this shit. So it was incredible.
What's the dream trip for you?
Well, listen, I would probably say the number one is to head over to New Zealand and check that out. I also want to definitely do South Africa.
Okay.
But I love to go to what I call the motherland, and that's France. And literally it would be a month-long excursion to France just to hit, Loire Valley, Bordeaux, Chablis, Champagne, all of it, all of those regions, but not rush through it. Like it would definitely be a deep dive into each of those regions. But yeah, that's something to look forward to for sure, to do all of that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Tom, what's your dream trip?
I don't know. I was very fortunate. I got to go to Italy a couple of years ago, and I got to try some wine when I was over there. So that was a very cool experience.
Well, that's what I'm drinking right now. Little Nibbio from the Piemonte, Brillo wine region. This is fantastic. This is one of my, and believe it or not, this bottle in particular is about $20. $20.
I thought Brillo made pasta.
Brillo, not Brillo. But this wine is fantastic in the sense of it's a 2018. You can lay this down and it will continue to develop. It has a wonderful balance of tannins, acidity, and it has this really fun tartness to it. Like my nickname, Tart. Nice cherry tartness to it, and which tells me that it's going to have a lot of room to develop, and it's a great wine for the price point. So again, like, you don't have to spend a shitload of money to have a good wine.
So
it's just a matter of like, how do you find it and where do you find it, right?
Is it normal to let red wine breathe?
I think it depends on the red wine itself, right? Like if it's an older red wine, I would probably let it breathe a little bit. There are some wines where I will open them up about an hour to 2 hours before I drink them, just because I know they're going to be a little bit bitter. They might just need to ease out the smoothness of it. So, it depends. It just depends on what you're drinking, for sure. I have a Coravin. So a lot of times I will use a Coravin. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's a great little gadget where you don't have to open up an entire bottle of wine. So you can do a quick taste to see where that wine is. And trust me, I've opened wines that have been pretty freaking expensive and they were corked. And thank God I used a Coravin to see if it was corked or not. So it's a nice little option to have, especially if you're hosting and so forth, to taste it, to test it out and see if I want to let it breathe or not. But most times, I'll open up a red wine about 30 minutes to an hour before I start drinking it.
For the novice in us, what does corked mean?
Corked? Oh man, it's painful. It's pretty much how I would put it is like when the cork itself kind of rots and a lot of oxidation gets into the wine. And so when you open it up, usually you'll smell like wet cardboard. It's not you'll know, like you'll smell
That's
it.
the wine I
like,
give to Tom.
Lucky you, Tom.
Those are the wines you gift, Tom. Those are the wines you give out to somebody. You need Corinne to tell you if it's corked or not, and then you can give it away as a gift.
Yeah, I've got a cabinet full of them.
Yeah, exactly.
You recognize the smell immediately. It's just wet and gross, and but it's also heartbreaking too, especially if you're looking forward to drinking the wine.
Oh, I could imagine.
Like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But it happens. It happens.
What causes that?
You know, there's a lot of reasons that it happens. It could just be a bad cork. You know, it could be a bottling situation. There's a number of things that could happen, or it could have been stored improperly, right? I think this is where I get a little bit anal, Lang, is how people store their wine. Like I've walked into a friend's house and I see wine that's on the kitchen countertop next to the refrigerator, and there's a bright light coming in. I'm like, God damn it. Have a little respect for the wine. Even if it's a lesser expensive wine, have some damn respect for it. Wine should be in a cool, dark place, right? And I know not everybody has a cellar. You can use your pantry for that. Just keep it in a cool, dark place where there's not a lot of vibration from appliances. And because it can disrupt the wine. Now, for me, I'm one of those crazy people where, my reds are between 55 and 59 degrees and all of that crazy stuff. But I know not everyone has a wine cooler, and that's okay. As long as it stays in a cool, dark place and it's not in a temperature area where it's fluctuating, it will impact the wine. The way I describe wine, and D-Mart, my husband David, always laughs at me, is wine is like a lady. It should be treated with respect. That's right. Wave that on, Lang.
I was waving a gram. I was waving a gram. By the way, it only took him 30 minutes to make an appearance. 30 minutes. So
miracle. How you store it, how you open it, how you serve it. And it doesn't matter if it's a $10 bottle of wine or a $2,000 bottle of wine. Treat it with respect.
Hey, Tom is the only single guy on here. That's good advice for you.
Yeah, well, you say it at a cool, dark place, and I was like, okay, I'm good. And then I thought, and she said, oh, make sure it's not going to be somewhere where it vibrates. And I went, oh shit, I have it about 2 feet from my washer and dryer. So
yeah, I was just thinking, thank God Corinne's not come to my house in a while, because since she's been in our house, I keep the wine out. It's basically red stand. It's not even laying down; it's standing up, and it's mixed in with everything else. So
there you go.
Well, Lane, that means I need to come over and straighten you and Andrea out.
Or just send us a wine fridge. It's cool. Send us a wine cooler. It'd be great. Or I'll store my bottles at your house. That'd be great.
I would love it. I will take care of them.
I think JD and I keep our wine the same way, out on the kitchen counter, standing up. Maybe I think you might keep yours in the pantry, JD, right?
Yeah, we keep the closed bottles in the pantry, and then the open bottles that we drank on out on the counter. But
you don't just have them sitting around your house the way they're over
or back behind me.
I was going to say, how long does a bottle last in your house once you uncork it?
When we're not doing 75 hard, not very long.
Yeah, I was going to say the next day.
So JD, if you know you're not going to drink the next day, how do you save your wine? I'm curious.
We've got one of those cork, like manufactured corks or whatever that we put in.
The vacuums, like the little vacuum?
Yep, you pump down on it. Yep,
you pump it. Yeah. There's another great device called Repour, where you don't have to use the vacuum system. And it's fantastic too. And it will keep wine for, Repour. I'll send you a link, JD.
Okay.
What does it do, Corinne?
And they're not paying me. They're not paying me for anything.
I was gonna say that's a promo.
That's not a promo. It's just a great little tool to have, and they're not super expensive. So
We got to add Tom to this thing, not an infomercial. So
no free ads.
hashtag not an ad.
yeah, so keeping it with a cork like that's bad, Corinne? I mean, it's 19 crimes. So what am I doing wrong? Is I need the 20th crime.
Oh, you're committing a crime doing that.
It'll be gone later. So
that's right. As long as you know where you're going to drink it, that's all good.
I mean, tomorrow's Friday. So as we sit here on a Thursday, expecting a blizzard coming to Charlotte this weekend, right? So it'll probably
1 inch of snow and maybe some ice, and everything will shut down.
Which only shut us down for the week. So
yeah.
I mean, Corinne, where you live, you might get rain, but we'll probably get snow and have no power, and I got to fill the bathtubs up in the house so I have water for the toilets. Fantastic.
That's right. You're 25 minutes north. That's right. You guys.
We get the lake effect snow, as they used to tell Slock. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
What's your so if I were to say, if JD and I were to say CBD to you, what comes to mind? What do you think about?
Calmness. And the reason why I say that is, Lang, you know my history, and I have quite the history.
I was gonna say this could go many different paths. So.
Hey, and just give people a little background. You guys used to work together.
Yes, we used to work at GMR long time ago. And Corinne has made a career of it now. She's a lifer.
I am a lifer. I think Lang, I've been fired a few times, but I'm like the guy in Office Space with the red stapler.
Exactly.
I just stick around.
Yeah, just stick around. wait 2 years for Olympics, they'll hire you back. So.
No, I mean, Lang and I have worked on, when he was at GMR, we did some alcoholic business with Jim Beam, and Lang also helped us with Olympic activation and so forth. And so, my career has continued with GMR, but there was a little bit of a hiccup in 2015. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it took a step back. So I had to do 6 months of chemotherapy, and typical with the side effects, I had a lot of, nausea with that and so forth. And just, the medicine that they would prescribe me was not working. I mean, it was just bullshit. And so I actually used CBD to help me through those rough times. There was also a lot of anxiety during that time because, you're always being tested to see if the tumors were shrinking and so forth. And there's a lot of mental issues around that. And I just, I wasn't sleeping well, and plus physically I wasn't feeling great. So I was using CBD to help me with all that bullshit. And it was a game changer for me. It was a game changer. And that has, and that's why I'm so excited with Lang and you all being involved in this is, I still find myself anxious. I have dogs that are anxious. And so I, want to continue to use CBD to help with that. And it's not just about anxiety, it's just about kind of this lifestyle, right? And just being able to have those resources to help with your healthiness of your life, right? And I think that's just truly important. So I know that's probably way too personal, way too much TMI, but I think that people, there's other options out there. There's other options. And I think that's really important to know.
It's great. That's really cool.
No, that's perfect. I mean, JD, you're going to say something? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, Corinne, those are the stories that make us realize that why we're doing this. And it's
right.
You know, we had James Rispoli on last podcast, and he talked about CBD. He used to be a square, and now CBD makes him a circle, and it kind of just roughens the edges, right? And I use that a lot now because I think that's what it does. And he used a great analogy. We talk about education, and CBD is not one of those, like red wine, you drink it and you feel the effects of red wine like that, right? CBD, it takes 7-10 days for it to actually take an impact in your life. And he said, the good CBD, you don't even realize it's doing it until you wake up one day and you're like, you just feel a change. And
you feel good. You feel good.
You feel better, right? I mean, you feel good. A, we're happy you're healthy, and B, we're happy that CBD helped you get through that. And you know, we have some products that are that will help your dogs with anxiety. We have CBD dog treats.
That's right.
You know, so I think anxiety is a big thing, and you know, anxiety comes in all different forms. People don't even realize sometimes they have anxiety. I mean, JD and I've told you, Tom and JD know this, but about a year ago, I went to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack. And it turned out to be an anxiety attack. And I was like, what are you talking about anxiety? He's like, well, the doctor's like, well, walk me through your life. And I walked him through what was going on. The race team was closing. This was happening. He's like, man, your life sucks right now. Of course you're anxious. I'm like, hey, thanks, doc. I really needed that vote of confidence there, you know? So, but you know, he's my family doctor for years. He knew me, and he's like, hey, you have anxiety. And it shows differently in everybody, right? Sometimes it's, you don't feel anxious, but your breathing changes, or you start getting sweats, or you start thinking about things over and over again. And, you know, so hearing you say that, it's, you know, fighting cancer is one thing, but also having anxiety about it, what the next day brings, the fact that CBD, not making any medical claims, the fact that it was able to help you get through that process and allow your cancer medicines to work is the important part, right? Because, you know, that's the piece that is most important, close to Jeremy and I, is we did this for our passion, but also to help people's lifestyles and make sure they can live a healthy lifestyle. The ultra marathoner to the everyday housewife to the person who's working a 9-to-5 job, who's single, living by themselves. I mean, it's anybody can have these issues, right? Especially this day and age. Jeremy and I talk about it often. The last 2 years, if you're not anxious, you're not alive. I mean,
I agree.
Unless you're living in a cave somewhere, you're not living, right? You're not experiencing life if you're not anxious, because everyone's anxious right now because no one knows what tomorrow brings. And the last 2 years have been a complete shit show, right? And you know, and who knows what the future brings. And you know, our passion for this is, like Rispoli said, take the corners off, round the edges, and make life. You know, he also said stuff used to stick to him, right? And now things roll off his back. And it's a perfect example of what our products do. They help you with those, and you just have to give it a chance. That's the thing we always stress. It's not instant. You know, it's not the red wine effect where you feel, you know, 1 glass, 1.5, 2 glasses, you feel the buzz. You don't feel that from CBD. You're not supposed to. That's the misconception. So I appreciate you telling your story and sharing that part.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you talk about the effects taking, you know, 7 to 10 days, you know, I would get done with a chemotherapy treatment. I was already thinking about in 2 weeks doing the next round, right? And so I would start taking CBD just to manage the 2 weeks in between. It wasn't so much when the chemotherapy was happening at that time. It was the runway to the chemotherapy that I was like, shit, I just need some help here, right? And I think what's really important is people should not feel embarrassed or feel less of themselves for utilizing a natural resource such as CBD.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, that is, if it's available, especially quality that you guys are producing and sharing, it's okay. Like, it's okay to have some help.
Yeah.
Don't be embarrassed by that, and continue to utilize that, you know, that support mechanism. So important. so important. And I think it's really interesting to continue to research, red wine that's infused with CBD. Some people might take that as like, wow, that's a double whammy. Right on. And actually it's just the opposite. It actually is very helpful. The side effects of having red wine infused with CBD are not as strong as if you just drink red wine by itself.
It probably neutralizes the effect.
It totally neutralizes the effect, and people will ask, well, then what's the quality of the wine? You know what? It could be a personal preference, right? Like, if you don't feel comfortable just drinking wine and you don't feel comfortable taking just CBD, well, now you got the best of both worlds, and it's going to give you a nice balance, right? And actually, the side effects are probably going to be minimized than if you just drink red wine, right?
JD, I see our next product I see our next product coming down the line here.
That's all right. Collaboration
time. So
time.
I mean, there's definitely, the option is there, right? And again, you guys are doing an incredible job educating, because I think some people just don't understand. They always think of, CBD, they think of something that it's more, is it legal, all that kind of bullshit. So it's really, there's just such a great opportunity here, for sure. Great opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Corinne. Hey, I want to say this, and I know we're kind of getting long on time, so I want to be respectful of your time, but about 8 years or so ago, I was in Minnesota for this conference, and they brought in a sommelier to speak to the group and talk about the experiences that they can provide. And you hit on this a little bit earlier, but I was just blown away at the knowledge and the depth and the intricacies of what this sommelier spoke about, and all the pairings of food, and it was just unbelievable. So, for someone that's going down a path like you are, to be able to share that knowledge is pretty spectacular. I mean, that's when someone who enjoys wine, no matter how deep of a level they have for it, to be able to sit with someone like yourself and understand all the intricacies that come with it, and all the ways to kind of exponentially enjoy it, and it's just fascinating. So I hope that people are able to share those experiences with you when you're ready to do that.
Oh, thank you, JD. I appreciate that. And I will tell you that I'm amazed by people who go down the path of becoming a sommelier, because the work involved in that is so incredible. There's a local establishment in Charlotte where the owner is an advanced sommelier. So there's different levels of sommelier, and most people recognize the master sommelier level because of the Somm series that you see on Netflix, where it takes like 10-15 years to become a master sommelier. Shit, I don't have time for that, and nor do I want to go down that road. But it is incredible for the knowledge that they acquire, but the knowledge that they want to share is so much. And when as I've gone through my education and I've met these incredible people, I just sit there like, shit, can I just like live with you for a few weeks and just absorb everything that and that's what I want to share with people, probably on a little bit of a different level. But I think more so than anything is that I want people to walk away and say, wow, I actually learned something, and I'm okay going outside my comfort zone on trying wine. I mean, I've had people where I've done wine tastings and they've said, I fucking hate Chardonnay. I'm not going to drink it. Okay, fine. Can I share something with you? Will you try this? and they drink it. They're like, wow, this is pretty good. I go, great. You just drank a Chardonnay from Chablis in France. No, I did not. I'm like, yeah, you did. Chardonnay can take on different forms, right? And I think that is what's fun, is being able to expose people to so many different things, especially in wine. And then you guys have the same passion and exposing people to CBD, right? Post recovery for workouts, supporting little boo-boos, dogs. That's what I call dogs, little boo-boos, to help them with their little anxiety.
I got nervous there for a second.
You probably thought I was talking about D-Mart, little boo-boo.
Poor D-Mart.
What I mean is, like, it's just, there's so many options out there, and I think that's what's fantastic. And and I love talking about it, and I love learning about it.
Well,
So
we
this has
appreciate
been
you being,
really
we
great.
appreciate you being on here, and we appreciate your expertise or your passion for wine that mirrors our passion for CBD.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thank you.
And
Appreciate
hey, Tom, don't forget to throw the podcast code out there.
Yeah. So for 25% off on queencitygreen.com, use code REDWINE25. It's all capital letters. It'll be on if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link here as well. So Corinne, again, Jeremy just said it, but thank you very much for lending your enthusiasm and your knowledge. You made us all much smarter. I got to go move my bottles of wine away from my water. But
Hey, box wine doesn't count, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and a quick shout out to Snoop Dogg there. Dude went from rapping about gin and juice to being on bottles of wine.
19
That's
crimes.
right. Snoop is the man. He knows how to market. He
He
knows how
does.
to do the marketing.
Him and Shaq.
That's
Whenever,
right.
Whenever the worlds of red wine and CBD collide, I think Snoop Dogg should be on that bottle for sure.
I mean, it's perfect, right? It was fitting.
There we go. So thank you very much for listening.
Definitely.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back in a few days with another episode. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Corinne.
you all.